Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we've got May with us all the way from Michigan. Welcome, May. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Very welcome
Excited
and
to be here.
so happy to have you.
Thank you.
Could you start with introducing yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Mai Bazzi, Mai Bazzi Al-Alali, because I got remarried. And I am a mother of two boys, and then I have some bonus children. My husband has three children, so we're a family of five. We need one more for the Brady Bunch, just to complete the Brady Bunch. But it's been a beautiful blending of the families. I was born in Liberia, West Coast Africa, because I am originally from Lebanon. So I am Lebanese, Liberian born, raised in the United States. So talk about identity and trying to figure out where I belong. At the age of 7, we came to the United States because my country could not live in my country, and there was a civil war that broke out in Liberia. So my mother was an American citizen. She's Lebanese as well. Both my parents are Lebanese, and this was home to her. So I came to this country when I was 7. And upon coming to this country, I do remember always feeling out of place, because, right, I am Lebanese, born in Liberia, being raised in the United States. So who am I? So the interesting about my name is it's May, M-A-I, and backwards it's I am. So any words or words you put after the word I am or I am not is a statement you make about yourself. So my whole life I have been trying to figure out, what am I going to put after that I am statement. So we can go with, yes, I am a wife, I am a daughter, I am a mother, I am a teacher, I am a hypnotherapist, I'm a mindset coach, but at the core, who am I? I was always the too Arab for the American or too American for the Arab. So where exactly did I fit in? So through the help of my mentors, coaches, therapists, and through myself too, I just uncovered the most beautiful I am statement. And that's what Nabi Isa tells us in the cradle. And that is, I am an inni Abdullah. I am a servant of Allah. And what does that look like for me? And what does that feel like? And really with the help of, just an amazing coach, I got to that simplicity. So yes, I am a teacher, instructional coach at this moment, but I also run my own business, Mayflower. So many beautiful things. I believe my mom was kind of had a prophecy about who I would become just by naming me May, and May is a flower. And that's only comes out in Vietnam in April. So it just kind of, it's beautiful. We all bloom like flowers, and the symbol of the flower is always, close to my heart. With the right environment and the right nutrients, we're the same. We flower like we bloom like the Mayflower.
That was beautiful. I really enjoyed listening to the introduction. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's rewind, and we're going to rewind to before your first marriage. And where would you like to begin your story?
My junior year in high school. I always had it within me. I did not learn how to read until I was in 7th grade. And by reading, I mean reading. I could read words, but I had no idea what I was reading. And nobody really ever, teachers did not really work with me on what that meant for me, I'm sorry, teachers really did not work with me on comprehension, because again, I was too Arab for the American mind, and all of my teachers were the white females or the white males. And I remember learning to be very self-conscious of that. But when I was in 11th grade in high school, I finally kind of put as we say in Arabic, عقلي براسي, I finally put my brain in my head. And I learned just how I would go to any length just to learn. Interesting that I became a teacher, but my junior and senior year in high school, if I go back all the time and I'm asked, those are the best years of my life, because I was free. And I was free to be me within my values. I learned what they were, but I learned to be me. However, sometimes our wings get clipped because of individuals who come into our lives with their own ideas of who we need to be, using religion as a tactic. And so I was really influenced negatively about myself when it came to certain people who were in my life because they had to be. And I was very self-conscious after that. Now, I was married at 18. And at that moment, I have high respect and high regard for the father of my children because he is a good man. And he's a good man, just we were not good together. And the misunderstanding was that, how do I put this? That the common line was الرجال قوامون على النساء, and that was understood to be I say, you do. And so I grew to fear Allah, but with that fear grew that resentment. That how can this loving God be so like you're not hearing what I'm saying? And that was not his intention. The father, that was not his intention. This is what he knew. This is what he believed in. But for me, it was more of, okay, so who am I then? Going back to that I am statement. So those years were I was very angry. And I went with what culture thought I should be doing, and that is, being a mom. And I was still, able to go to school, and I became a teacher, and I worked through that. Um, I worked through uncovering myself. And then in 2013, I went to Hajj.
Well, so how long were you married for?
So I was with him for 14 years.
Okay, and you said you were angry. Now, is that anger due to you not having been able to express yourself adequately, or that like you were stuck in some kind of a role that you didn't sign up for? What exactly was it that made you
I
angry?
wasn't heard. I wasn't being heard, meaning, people listen. I mean, they listen to words, but how do they hear? How do they translate them for you? There was a point where I said, and this is not a fact, but this was at the point when what I was feeling. I said, you always do this to me. You did this to me. He really didn't. Okay. It was a choice, it was a choice I made. I don't blame anybody for anything except accountability on my own based on what I knew. So I kind of forgiven all those parts. But I know what I am really saying is you're not hearing me. You're not hearing what I need. You have this idea of who I need to be, and this is what you're looking for, and it's your right. I just can't be that person. So I was very angry. I didn't know that then, but I do know that now.
Yes, thanks. And you were saying after I don't know, 2000
Yeah,
and
2013, I went to Hajj, and that year was my first Hajj pilgrimage. And during that time, one of the rituals of Hajj is we go to Mina. And as we're walking up to Mina, um, there was something that ensued within the guys. Something happened with and unfortunately it was a Sunni Shia thing. What the Saudi government did is they put all of the Europeans and the Americans together because they felt, okay, we kind of understand each other's culture. And one of our guys was, walking, and as we're going up into our tents, he sees that, the company name, and he asks him, the company name, are you Sunni or Shia? And then the one guy says, I'm Shia. And then the other guy says, a derogatory term towards the Shia. And then the Shia said the same thing towards the Sunni. So they took him in, and it was really bad. And I was stuck outside the tent at the time. I had not made my way into the tent. I don't know how I got stuck out there, and I don't remember parts of it, but I'm being told that I was literally pushed back in because I was stuck to the ground. And I remember a moment where I stood inside the tent and I was thinking, actually, I was not coherent. I was telling my friend, one of my colleagues, blood. That's all I was saying, because it was that I could see it. It was happening. And our tent was surrounded by people with, sticks, and it was very, very scary. And I remember thinking in that moment that this is how I'm going to die. And they literally said, we're going to do to you what they did in Karbala. So this was the moment where, it was that I'm gonna die not knowing, not ever living happiness. Now in my mind, I'm thinking happiness is, going out and spending. That's not what I meant. At that moment, I meant that I lost who I am. Going back to that I am statement, because the whole time everybody else is telling me who I am. So when I came back, I finally had that hard conversation. And that hard conversation led to, me becoming a single mother, just having a new I am statement of I am somebody who is having to do this on my own now. Because the whole time it was very codependent. Um, and that's kind of where I learned more about myself. And where that comes from is the things that you go through. So you grow through what you go through. And as cliche as that sounds, really, it's the fact of life.
Are you willing to tell us about how this whole situation in your marriage impacted your mental health?
Yes, for sure. Actually, there's so much that impacted my mental health. And that was just never feeling like I lived up to what was expected of me because, getting a divorce is very taboo. Like they'll tell you, أبغض الحلال عند الله الطلاق, right? So even though could be it is a truth, but it does not negate the fact that it's allowed. But it was only allowed under the circumstance of, in their mind, that he beats you, that he cheats on you, that he's a drinker, that he goes against Allah's covenant, which was not the case at all, right? I was very unconfident. I was not confident within my own decision making. And the very first decision I made was this. So could you imagine like making this decision and then people saying that, gosh, you're going to hell for this. So it impacted me by feeling that even though I made this decision instinctively, knowing that it's the right decision, I lived with a lot of guilt and shame. So I was really ill, physically and emotionally for a while. And I, left the teaching profession for some time and I was trying different things. So it was, I never, like my best advice to people is never make too many changes at once, because that will impact your mental health too. And I pointed the finger outward a lot instead of saying, okay, let me take accountability for this while understanding things. And I'm not saying if somebody does something that's, really traumatic for you just to say, oh, I brought this onto myself. That's not that's not what I recommend. I just think to myself, what am I learning from this? So I don't repeat this cycle. And there's a lot of dysfunctional cycles that happens within our family units that we just repeat. So how am I going to break that cycle? And that led me to meeting people like Tony Robbins and Dr. Joe Dispenza and uncovering more. And by the way, so many of us read, but are we really applying what we're reading in our lives? If we're not doing that, it's not going to happen. So I didn't want to live that lie anymore, because if you're lying to yourself or to other people, you're not going to heal. I'm not a medical professional, but healing means that you are somebody who is, whatever happened to you does not impact where you're going. That's the promise I made to myself, because my mental health was impacted very negatively, and I lived in such a dark place that it was hard for me to face myself and to face my children. And they were my driving force for so much, because I thought it was fair for them to see, if I'm going to break that cycle, that generational cycle, I can't repeat what was repeated in the past. And that's that dysfunctional pattern of blame. We live in a blame game kind of world. And besides blame, it's also how am I going to empower myself? And I'm going to empower myself. My children are going to be empowered too.
So how did you manage your mental health? Your
A
declining
lot of
mental
help. I got a lot of help. And when I first talked to my parents about therapy, and honestly, I had to live on my own too. When a woman gets divorced, it's, she goes back to her family's house. And I have wonderful mom and dad, wonderful mom and dad. With them, it was like, come back, we'll take care of you. But how am I going to uncover myself if that's the case? And how am I going to raise my children to be independent as well? And I honestly didn't feel like it was their burden to bear if I am making this decision. So I managed this through, first it was through therapy. I've been with my therapist for about 10 years, and now I'm still in therapy because I do maintenance, right? I work with people on their mental health now. So also I need that maintenance, and my coaches and empowering myself. As I said, I could read. And I read a lot of books. I went to a lot of seminars with the big guys, Dr. Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton and Tony Robbins. I mean, if you're 14,000, you're in a room with 14,000 people, you can hear a pin drop. I mean, and I don't really care about, the political side of what they do at this moment, right? I want to get back what I'm learning from them. I could do all of that, but unless I am disciplined enough to put it into action, I'm going to repeat that cycle. So it was really making a promise to Allah. And I had a wonderful coach, and she taught me. I had wonderful coaches, but my two main ones, I worked with them together, like simultaneously. It was trying to figure out my I am statements, from the spiritual side, and it was figuring out who I am from the business aspect side, right? I said I'm a teacher, but I also have my own business. That was another rewiring. I spent hours and hours just really delving deep within and loving and self-love. And self-love is not going to get my nails done. Self-love is just accepting every side of me, however that looks, however silly that looks, and however crazy or sad that looks, just accepting it and working through it.
So,
And I never suppress, no suppression.
so if you could go back to that person who was going through her divorce or wanting to get divorced, what can you take accountability for now in retrospect?
And never speaking my truth because I didn't know it. If I could go back and speak to myself in that way, I would say find a better way to say what you want instead of being angry. But I didn't feel like I could,
You just,
right? Now I know that I could.
right, you didn't have the tools, you didn't know how.
No, no.
Mm.
I am a firm believer in empowering ourselves with the tools, but who teaches you that at 16?
Mm.
If they're living their life in that cycle, they're fine with it. But I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the voice. And my friend told me something once. I told her, I said no. I did, in the beginning. I said no, like I wasn't feeling it. I was 17 years old. I wasn't feeling it. And she said, not loud enough. When you say no and it's not loud enough, meaning you're not firm in your stance, you're not confident in your stance, you're not being heard.
So in the post-divorce phase, what was it like for you? Were you single parenting? Were you co-parenting? Were you financially okay? Were you trying to make ends meet? If you could tell us about that part.
I was co-parenting. My children would be come to my house a week, their dad's house a week. So it was 50-50. And it was a struggle financially. So I would have to, find jobs. I would take on a second job. I did work for some time, working two jobs. But I did it. I did it. And I always I always found evidence, like we talked about, when I would have to pay some bills, and I would always find evidence in my mind and say, remember, last month you were able to do it. So I always found the evidence that I'm able to do it. And I did it every month. And it was 1 month at a time. That's how I kind of live my life. And it's interesting within again, as I said, um, I would walk into places and be ashamed because now as a divorced woman, that new identity within the culture is just, you're looked at differently, or maybe it was my perception that I was looked at differently. But my mother told me something. She said, no, you're going to walk in with your head held high. And that was really a driving force for me. And yeah, it was hard, but it was just growth happens when things are hard. Nothing happens when things are easy. You just keep getting easy. You keep a repetition of and it works for people. If you want mediocre, great. I just couldn't settle for that.
So being in a place where you were emotionally in a low spot, and on top of that, you were struggling financially. How did that impact your parenting? How could you be there for your
Oh my
children?
gosh. There were times where and I didn't understand. It's so unfair to them because they're so confused. Like, what the heck? I just spilled the milk, right? It just felt a lot of a lot of pressure where you get really angry at situations, and we end up taking it out on them. And actually, my children and I have had really hard conversations. Now they're adults. My sons are 21 and 17. And we talk about this, and I'll say to them, I'll say, "Oh my God, I can't believe I said that. I'm so sorry, but you were right." So acknowledging them too now as adults has been a process for them too, because my son will tell me, "Why didn't I get that, mama? The calm one. That's what he wanted." And I'll just acknowledge it's hard to hear. He literally told me once, "I know you did your best, but it wasn't good enough." It's hard. Even when I say it now, like as a mother, it wasn't good enough. It
And
wasn't enough of what he needed at the time.
can that be repaired?
Yes, yes, through new actions and new conversations and new acknowledgement. Because when you acknowledge somebody else, it softens their heart. It's just like, okay, she understands. She did the best she could with the tools that she had. And they're going to be in relationships, and so that understanding will begin to change. And I'm not, I don't want them to be mad at me, but I'm okay if they tell me, "Mama, I'm mad at you." I'm okay with it because it's valid, and we talk through it. Conversations, why are we weird and not have conversations? Let's talk about it.
When you talk about attending all of these workshops and reading all of these books, but it has to be in tandem with action. So what does that action look like to you? And this, of course, is linked to the whole topic of you healing.
For me, it's been say what you mean and mean what you say. So if you're gonna talk the talk, you got to walk the walk. My go-to all the time was running away. I would hide. That was my choice of that was my coping choice. And the part that for me, healing part, even though I spoke up for myself, is to, if I'm going to say, if I'm going to say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And that's really my superpower, is I show up for myself. And without being judgmental, and what I mean by saying judgmental is I don't say something is good or something is bad. It just is. And if I want to fix it or change it, what do I need to do? What are the steps that I need to follow for me to get there? And when you say you're going to do something and you actually do it, your subconscious programming starts to believe you and trust you. When you don't, that's when your subconscious programming is like, "Yeah, okay. Yeah, you said that before. That's not going to happen." So with repetition, and I've learned um, from the experts, Dr. Caroline Leaf, I've seen her in action. Gabrielle Bernstein, I've seen her in action. I've actually gone to see these people and say, "Okay, this is how far they've come." And I'm vulnerable too. Like I can be vulnerable with you and say, "Really, I screwed up here." And if I screwed up, it doesn't mean I'm beating myself up. It's saying it happened. Okay. If I would have done things differently, maybe I would have not learned this lesson. My hardest thing that led to the final spiral was um, during COVID. I had a really rough experience with an individual who, I want to say, if I take accountability for it, I'm taking accountability for oversharing. And that's another coping mechanism too. When you overshare, you're trying to get validation all the time. And even when I reached out after a time where this, people would call it betrayal, but I would just say it's, somebody projecting their life on me and vice versa, right? And I don't get that response back. I just accept that people are where they are for a reason. I am where I am for a reason. So just that self-acceptance, honestly, at each phase of my life, that self-acceptance, as long as I am not doing anything to morally hurt you or that other person, or even myself, I'm in the growth process. So I'm always progressing towards something for myself. So what's my next level self? So that healing journey is really loving 7-year-old Mai and 5-year-old Mai, and 15-year-old Mai and 30-year-old, just loving every part of myself and kind of being reparenting.
So when you're talking about, can we go a bit into reparenting?
Yeah, sure.
When you reparent, do you set aside a certain time every day, almost in a meditative state, like thinking
Mhm.
back to your younger self and expressing and showing love to her? How does it work? If you can go into
It
more.
depends. Yeah, it depends. So sometimes it comes up for me in a trigger. Okay. So if I'm triggered by, my husband, because I'm remarried now, we'll discuss that. If something my husband says, I'm able to identify that trigger without taking it personally from him, because I can say, okay, so this is coming from a part of my life where I felt unheard. And at this moment, it's not necessarily true that I'm being unheard. He's just not understanding what I'm saying. There's the consciousness, that 5% consciousness that's always in, like that helping me subconsciously. So I'm working with my awareness and my subconscious. But I did that work also through hypnosis, hypnotherapy, and meditation, and again, showing up and kind of putting my money where my mouth is. So that's what that looks like. The key is, and Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this, the key is you can do it with your eyes closed. You have to practice it with your eyes open too. And even Tony Robbins, he said, life is going to teach you, right? When you go home, it's all high vibes here, but how are you going to continue that? And that's, again, understanding self, understanding that other people, not taking things personally, other people will meet you exactly where they are in their life, and self-acceptance.
So now, fast forward to the present moment, when you undergo challenges, and I'm sure you still do. I mean, this is
Oh yeah, girl.
right. I
Yeah.
mean, so then, what is your strategy?
Time. I give myself the time to feel emotions. I know I'm to a point now, I know where it comes from. And sometimes I'll be like, didn't I already deal with this? Like, why is it showing up? It just shows up in small doses because I understand that, because it was so habitual in the past, that my body's like, okay, I need that hormone, that one I'm used to. So it pushes those buttons, but I'm literally retraining. Like you would retrain yourself, like say, you're going to sit here until it goes, like it passes like a cloud. So I don't suppress it. I acknowledge it. And 95% of the time, the thoughts are not true. So just acknowledging that that thought is there because it was like a coping mechanism, or something that I'm trying to tell myself a story, because I do go through struggles. I wear multiple hats a day, and I need to learn what I need to learn how to do better is how to rest. I don't know how to do that yet.
Hmm.
So it's a constant being okay with spending that time with myself. I love spending time with myself, because I'm okay with, I laugh by myself too. You're probably gonna think I'm crazy. I'll say a joke and then I'll crack up, and I'm like, if anybody looks at me, they think that where is this girl coming from? She's crazy. Yeah, it's okay. Maybe I am. It's okay.
So how much of time was it that took to reach the point of being in this anxious and angry state to where you felt, wow, like this is a total turnaround?
Yeah,
What was that
just
time?
recently, to be honest with you, because I'm learning to face stuff, right? I was always putting them in the back burner. But with I felt it maybe 2022. Okay. I felt that change was turning around, and actually being in my new marriage, still where that growth, old parts of my old marriage were showing up, not because of him, because of me. That's what I know in a relationship. That's what I know in the patterns. Somebody's always out to get me. No, I'm not that important. And what I mean when I say that, I say it lovingly. Nobody's out to get me. Everybody has their own, life that came from me being really bullied and severely bullied in middle school, and it trickled into different parts of my life. But just about maybe after I was 2023, maybe around the time that we met. I really felt, and I started to face my fears. I'm talking, speaking in front of crowds now. I'm facing something that I would not face in the past. So I'm not avoiding anymore. So my old coping mechanisms that were disempowering, I kind of had to let them go and put in something that's more empowering. And Dr. Daniel Amen, I'm also a brain health trainer. He says that when you feel like you want to run, stay. That's when you're reprogramming and retraining. So it was just me staying and showing up.
So then would you say that when you met your second husband, you were not healed yet?
No,
Oh,
definitely.
wow. Okay. Now, what is your opinion about this? Because people say, oh, don't move on to another relationship until you have reached full healing and all of that.
I thought I was.
Mm.
I thought I was. Because I did bleed into that. Those old patterns did bleed into that as I was still, okay, so when you meet somebody, they're going to mirror you. Okay. He was in this kind of the same place vibrationally. When we talk about vibrations, it means emotionally. We were in the same place emotionally. And we had to learn the art of having a disagreement. And a disagreement to us, we learned it together. But remember, he was on the same page as I was. Us together, we learned together. We went to Lewis House together. And this part, he was growing and he wanted the same things I did, but we were in different places. And that's where that key was. What my belief is, since you asked me my belief, you cannot go into another relationship thinking it's going to heal you from your past relationship, because it's not going to happen. Same patterns will show up. If you go into a relationship and say, you know what, I am still working on myself and I am learning from different triggers, and I don't know when things will show up. And I want you to know that it's never personal, and you work together, because a relationship, you relate together. Um, you don't have to be on the same level. I just don't believe in going into a relationship because you're hurt from another one. It's not going to happen. It's not going to work. But for me, with Ahmed, my husband now, we are uh, we work on agreements. And that agreement does not mean that I am going to agree with his decision all the time or vice versa. It's just like, okay, I can see where you believe this, and I'm going to support you where you are at, and he supports me where I am at. Um, so that's kind of when I met him, it was like it was the first. It was okay, let me just get over everything. I want to forget. It shows up. It's just going to show up, as Oprah says, in a different skirt. It's going to show up looking in a different format. And really, it becomes really toxic. Um, so yeah, I am, as long as you are on the same page and you talk about values and what you value and you can honor each other at that level, it can work. It will work.
Let's talk about how you met your second husband.
So Ahmed, I met him when I worked for an organization, and he was one of the members that was going in this organization. And he was, I remember, like, he was, it's silly to say sometimes, maybe it's not, but he was literally, I remember at that moment I was in such a hard place. And I prayed to Allah. It was raining, and I prayed to Allah and I said, help me find somebody, like bring somebody to me. And it was 2 days later where it was like, here you go. But he was not ready to be, he was in a different place too, in his life. And so we were friends for a while, and then we actually were together, and then we spent about 2 years apart. His family situation was in a different place, and he needed to go back and honor that. And that was the time. I know I spoke about my junior and my senior year being my favorite years, but these 2 years also were my years where I learned how to love to be with myself, and spend time with myself. Although I don't recommend you being in isolation for a very long time, especially during COVID. Again, every phase has its challenge, and how we're going to overcome those challenges. But we met through just him, and it was my name, interesting, that gave him that light bulb, like, Haji and Mai, and how does that work together? Like, is she like 70 years old, who's like a really cool grandma? And when he first met me, I was like, oh, this is who I'm coming to see. So it's, that was him. Like he knew about me way before, I knew anything about him. And that was intriguing for him. And I don't know why, but it was. And um, that time that we spent apart, it was very interesting. We lived parallel lives, just kind of going on the same road, same things, but we just were not together. And it was like zero contact. We just respected that time and space. And
It's just for clarification. So you had gotten married and then you separated and then got married again.
yes, yeah. So we were together and then we were separated and then we got back together. And it was honestly, when you're in a relationship, you want to like we view that relationship as a third person. So there's me, there's him, and then there's the relationship. And when we're viewing that third person, just like you would take care of a child or take care of another person, it needs care. And so that's what we focus on and we work through together. And is it always rainbows and butterflies? You can say about 75% of the time, 80% of the time. Yeah, we laugh, we're friends before anything.
So I'm sure you'd say May in marriage number 2 is very different from May in marriage number 1.
Yes, yes, for sure. For sure. And that just comes from self-discovery and who I was and who I wanted to be and who I knew I could be. And I work with, again, I work with people. As I said, I'm a mindset coach as well. If I was not authentic to myself, I could not teach people authenticity. And so that makes my job a little bit easier because I am authentic. And within a relationship, I don't need to put on a facade. And so that's clear. And there was actually, as I said, if you lie to yourself or if you lie to other people, you're never going to heal.
Would you like to say something about cultivating a relationship with yourself?
It started off with inner child work. That's the term. And it was really going in and listening to, there's a lot that you don't know consciously, but subconsciously, and that was really going internally and listening to what is it I'm really needing at this moment? Because sometimes I would have a tantrum. And that tantrum would be, I would, stop talking or I would ignore other people. That's so immature, right? That's so 4-year-old. But really, that's what it was. It was my 4-year-old self showing up. Because at that time where, maybe I wanted to hang out with, again, I was raised in Liberia, war torn too. I mean, my parents are just trying to survive. And what does the 4-year-old crying need to be heard? Right now we're just trying to put food on the table in Africa, right? So really hearing what I'm saying. I really want you you don't have to say that I'm right. I just want you to hear what I'm saying. So having that language with myself, I'm just saying, I need you to listen, let me cry and not say, stop being a baby.
You
Because I
say,
need to let it out.
you saying this to yourself.
Yes, I'm
Like,
saying this to myself.
May, stop judging May.
Yes, exactly. Stop judging May because we are already judged. Even though that judgment from other people is coming from where they are in life, they're really judging themselves, but we really take it personally. How dare you say that about me? Again, it doesn't mean that people can go around talking about you and you're like, oh, no, just, stop being weird. Stop being weird and talking about other people because it brings you nowhere. It's exactly what you're going to attract. And once I learned that I was like a super attractor, like I can say something and I know that it's going to happen. But that works negatively too. If you say something negative about yourself, it's going to happen. What are the statements that I say to myself in the morning? And again, I'm not going to just say, I am beautiful, I am inspiring, if I don't believe it subconsciously, it's going to catch it. It's going to be like, okay, that's a bunch of BS.
Okay, so then let's talk about these positive affirmations. Let's
Yeah.
stand in the mirror and say a whole list of things about
Yeah. Yeah.
how great
Yeah.
I am. What is your opinion? And how do we,
Embody it first, believe it and live it.
okay, but what if a person says, well, but I don't feel it. I'm not feeling it. I just don't believe it. So
Yeah,
what?
that's exactly what they're going to bring on. So if you're going to stand in front of, and I get this from clients that are saying, I am ugly and fat. And I say, okay, is that story you want to continue to believe? Is that how you want me to support you? Like that's a story you want to believe? Well, no. So what do you want to believe instead? I want to believe that I am beautiful at any phase. I want to, but it takes practice, okay? And it's not going to happen overnight. It takes practice in you believing that this is somewhere you can be and you live it and embody it. I'm going to give you an example with money. A lot of people have money as an important energy, and money is just an energy, okay? So what are your beliefs about money? Okay, if I were to ask you, Sumaya, what are your beliefs about money?
Okay, well, could I just speak generally? A person could have
Absolutely,
a
absolutely.
person, a person could have a belief that there's enough for all, but then you get other people who might say, I believe that there's not enough to go around,
Mm-hmm.
that only like certain people are blessed with wealth. Or maybe I believe that I am totally deficient in working with finances. And
Okay.
I'm just not a money type of person. I don't know how to work with finances. There's a belief.
Yeah. Okay. So that is a statement, that's a belief, and you're going to continue to recreate that unless you change your belief around money. And how we think about happy money is like when I get a bill, for example, and this took practice, like a lot of practice. Again, I was raised in war, okay, where it was like, okay, so we're just going to count our pennies and, you know, we're going to be careful how we spend here and spend there. Until when I get a bill, when you get a bill, how do you feel about paying it? Like, oh, another bill? Or do you feel like I have the means to take care of this and I still have, my electricity, I'm able to pay for my like electricity again. So the energy around money. And the interesting thing is when you say that I'm not good at finances, you're not going to be good at relationships. You're not going to be good at, in the family. So how you do anything is how you do everything. So it shows up for you in different parts of your life. Spirituality, am I doing enough, for, through my prayers? Am I doing enough for the community? So that bottom line is it's not enough, which translates to I am not enough. So how do we rechange our words and create a different statement about yourself? And it starts with simple things that we say. And when you're talking about affirmations, it's about, I'm not a believer of just stand in the mirror and say it, be intentional about it. If it's just three things that you truly believe, like I did a really great job with my interview today with Sumaya. I believe that. Instead of, I am this just this amazing, which I know inshallah, I will be, but, just something that I believe in the moment. And you get what you focus on in life. So focus on what you want.
So are you saying that instead of just saying a list like, oh, I am kind and I am courageous and I am beautiful, to actually focus on maybe two or three things that are alive in the moment,
Exactly.
with the hope that that thing will end up expanding so that those
Yep.
other things will become more genuine statements? Like, for example, what if a person wants to become more courageous, more brave, but they feel there's a lot of fear underlying everything in life? How do they transition from fear to courage?
Good question. So I'm going to ask you a question. If you say to yourself, I am kind, but the day before you were rude to the waitress, your subconscious mind is going to be like BS. So your actions have to match your words. Or I was whatever, or I'm generous, but I was, when the waitress, rolled her eyes at me, and this is how do I know this? Because I've practiced it. Okay. So I practice new behaviors and habits. So if I'm going to believe that I'm kind, I'm going to be kind to everybody. I'm just not going to pick and choose who I'm kind to. So this is where your actions meet your words. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
It does in that situation. I'm just wondering, what does for example, the fearful person do to become more courageous? Like,
Practice courage.
do they go out there? Yeah, do they go
Yeah.
out there
Yes.
and say, today I'm going to just push myself and do something that is a bit out of my comfort zone,
Yes.
and then look
100%.
in the mirror and say, today I was kind of courageous. I
Yes. I
courageous
was
today.
courageous.
Okay. Hmm.
That's it. I'm courageous to the level that I could give at the moment. It could even be, opening a door for somebody. Do you know that that's not a thing? Like I always raised my children. I grew up like you open the door for the person who's behind you, but that's like not always like a practice. So I just I strive to be the example. Okay, I just mean, I mean, like, what do we want to see in this world? Be it.
So you're saying that the affirmation has to be in parallel with actual
Mm-hmm.
manifest action.
Yes. Your actions have to match your words. And Allah tells us in the Quran, He tells us the more I don't want to butcher it in Arabic, but the more thankful you are, the more I give you. And He's giving us, He's telling us a clue. Like it's just continue to be grateful, continue to show up. And that's an action. How are you grateful? I mean, it's not something that's small,
Mm.
having gratitude, even for the past experiences that just suck.
So in closing, what advice do you have to our community?
This comparison culture that we have, stop it. When we're on social media and scrolling, or even in modern, like in modern day, when you are watching something, you don't really know what's going on in the background. If you like something that you see, figure out what they did to get there instead of being envious or jealous or carrying those like those low vibration emotions. Figure out what they did. Come from a loving place. Say, hey, I noticed that you have this, this career, and I want to figure it out. What did you do? Instead of bringing yourself down or saying somebody is better than you, or they're lucky. This is how they got there. There's no such thing as luck. I mean, some people are born with, but there's no such thing. People work hard. You just see the end result of their hard work. So you can get there as long as you're willing to put the work. And if you're fine with being mediocre, great. But this comparison culture, stop it.
Thank you so much, May. It was great.
Thank you for having me.
Wish you and your family all the best.
Thank you. Yours as well. And if you have any other follow-up questions too, let me know. I'm willing
Yes,
to.
yes. I'll link your information if anyone would like to reach out to you, inshallah.
Yes, thank you.